Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dealing with Difficult Dementia Behaviors workshop. Even though I promoted the one tonight, I'm actually going to do the second one tomorrow and the third one on Monday. And the Dealing with Difficult Dementia Behaviors workshop is a series of 3 short webinars to help you deal with difficult dementia behaviors. So whether you are a family caregiver for a person living with dementia, or you are helping a family caregiver, this is the place to be, the place to get the support and tools you need to prevent and manage common dementia behaviors so that you can have a calmer and less stressful experience, so that you can respond lovingly and reconnect to your family member living with dementia. So for this webinar, I want to talk about the hamster wheel of the constant arguments. So you know what I'm talking about. I'm fine, even though you're thinking, no, you're not. You have a bath, and you're thinking, no, you really need one. It's been a while since you've let water touch you. Or the horrible no to everything you want to get your loved one to do. Or if it's early in the disease and you're starting to see some issues with driving or finances, the protests that I'm a safe driver or I pay the bills, there's nothing wrong, and deep down, there are things wrong. And for today's webinar, I want to talk about ways to get off the hamster wheel and to diffuse and handle those arguments. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more I can dive into. But I also realize people have only so much acetylcholine in their brains. So I'm Rita Jablonski. I'm a nurse practitioner, researcher, and expert in non-drug ways to prevent and manage many dementia behaviors. I've been working with people living with dementia for over 40 years, and I've been helping caregivers for the last decade. And as I said a few minutes ago, this is the first in a series of 3 webinars that I'm also going to save as videos. And if you are on my emails, I'll be sending out the links to the videos for you to look at later or share with friends and colleagues that you think would benefit. And in these 3 webinars that make up the whole workshop, I'll be showing you how to lovingly respond and reconnect to your family member so that both of you have a better caregiving experience and both of you have a better quality of life. Because let's face it, if you're struggling as a caregiver and really having problems with a lot of things, and you look at how you might handle some situations, you're doing the best you can, but the better prepared you are and the better you are able to understand these behaviors, the better the experience is for both of you. And that is so important. So as you can see here on the slide, I started out as a nursing assistant. I've had a lot of education, as I tell my friends, it keeps me off the streets. And I've worked in all sorts of settings, but I'm currently a tenured professor, and I also work in a memory clinic as a nurse practitioner. And my university has all these social media policies where I'm not allowed to mention where I work because somehow I don't know, all these social media policies, but like none of you know how to use Google. So I'm just leaving it there. I also was a family caregiver for a period of time. And the family caregiving experience really shaped a lot of the empathy I have for other family caregivers. And early on in my career, when I started out as a nursing assistant and before I took courses in neurology and neurobiology and had the experience I've had in the neurology clinic, I feel like I'm a permanent resident, like a medical resident or a geriatrics fellow, because every time I walk in, I'm learning something. But in the beginning, I found solutions by trial and error. And I kept finding solutions by trial and error until I dived deeper into brains and behaviors when I was getting my PhD. And that's when everything started to click. And I rapidly realized how brain changes were causing these behaviors. I was also a family caregiver for some time, and that experience also helped me to develop aspects of this program. So the goal of this 3-webinar workshop, with the first one today, is to show you the critical things you need to know to prevent and manage the arguments so that you can have a calmer and less stressful caregiving experience. And I'm purposely concentrating on one small aspect. As Glenn shared in the chat, this is a big, brave topic. Yes, it is. And I can spend hours just going and giving you strategies for this behavior. But I would probably send you all into a catatonic state. I have a lot of free resources. I have a Facebook page. I have the Make Dementia Your Bee blog, which is where all the free stuff is. And I also have a podcast, Make Dementia Your Bitch. It's on all of the major platforms. And I started that podcast roughly, I want to say, a year ago. I just dropped episode 46. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the shrieking brain, because if you can understand a little bit of what's going on in the brain, in the mind, you can figure out why you're getting the arguments. And in this slide, this is a pathology slide, and on the right is the brain of a person who died from a non-neurodegenerative issue. You see how nice and plump the tissue is? So the black spaces, they're called the sulci, the folds, and the plump, the singular is gyrus, plural is gyri. And all of these brain folds are made up of nerve cells that send signals to each other. And the closer they are, the more likely their dendrites are going to touch each other, and that's how they send the messages. The brain on the left is from a person who died from a dementia. And you notice the gyri are skinnier and the sulci are much more pronounced. There's a lot of dead space between the folds. And that happens because neurons die in the brain and the brain tissue shrink. And when nerves die, the nerves that are left kind of move far away from each other, and so they can't send signals. They can't talk. So what does that mean? What that means is, I use the analogy of your brain is like a box. All of your memories go in that box. And those memories start out, those memories build up over time, just like you fill things into the box. And the memories from like 1964, they're at the bottom of the box. What you just ate for lunch, that's at the top of the box. So as people's brains shrink, dependent with the dementia, as you have loss of neurons, it's like the box shrinks. So the most recent memories that were on top, they fall out and they're gone. And because the brain is shrinking, it's very difficult to put new memories into the box, although it can happen. And with vascular dementia, you do retain capacity to make some new memories, but not the way you did in the past. With the other dementias, that also becomes compromised as the dementia progresses. But when the box shrinks, like I said, the older memories fall out, and the older memories are more accessible. What happens in the dementia brain as this process is starting is that the loss of current memories plus access to older memories essentially creates a new reality. And that's where the arguments and the protests arise. That's where you get the same topic over and over again. And heaven help you if you say to the person, if you say to your loved one, that's the fourth time you've asked me that, they're going to come out swinging. No, it's not. I didn't ask you that, because in their mind, they forgot that they forgot. And you're the crazy one. This is where you get the denial, or rather, not the denial, but the assertion that whatever you're asking me to do, I've just had it. Because the loss of the short-term memories with the combined access to longer-term memories does a really weird thing with the ability to tell about the passage of time. Like right now, I have a pretty good idea. It's evening, even though I have my blinds shut, so the light in between the storms doesn't come through and mess everything up. I have a sense it's after supper, it's early evening. I have a pretty good idea of what I did all day. I could give you if you ask me, what did you do all day? I can say, I got up and I fed the dog, and then I had a Zoom meeting, and I had another Zoom meeting, and I went on campus, and I had other meetings, and I met with my dog. I can give you a blow by blow because all that's there. But if I have an inability to hold on to those short-term memories, I have no idea. I have no anchor. I have no structure about what I've done in the last 8, 10, or 12 hours. So instead, I have access to all these old memories. So I do have memories of having taken a bath. I just can't tell if I just took a bath 5 minutes ago, or if this is a memory of me taking a bath 10 years ago. But my sense of time is jumbled. So if you say to me, you need to take a bath or you need to change your clothes, I'm going to argue with you and say, nope, I just did that because of the weird time space continuum I'm in with the dementia. Now, you also have situations where people deny that they need medicine or they need care because they're moving backwards in time. That's what this phenomena of losing your short-term memories and having access to long-term memories. You're not living in 2022. It's interesting in clinic, one of the questions I ask is, what year is it? And that gives me a sense of where people are in their personal timeline. One of my colleagues made the comment that people living with dementia may not know where or when they are. And when she said that, I thought, wow, that's brilliant. Because I ask people all the time, what year is it? 1997, 2001, and that helps me get a sense of how far back in time they may have moved with the access to those memories. And therefore, 10 years ago, maybe they didn't have high blood pressure or they didn't have diabetes and they weren't taking those meds. So when you're giving them the medicine today, they may not have access to that memory of a current health condition. And they may say, I'm just fine. And you're thinking, oh, crap, now what? Those are some of what's going on, and this then informs the strategies I'm going to talk about in a second. Another important piece to keep in mind is emotions are contagious. There are people in my life, they walk into a room and I'm like, wow, my day just brightened because some of these people have such an energy. They're so fun and they have such a high vibe, and I'm like, wow, they're cool. And there's other people I see coming and I'm looking for IV Prozac or something because I know their mood is going to be so crappy, I'm going to hate it. And my point here on this slide is we are energetic beings and we can feel the energy of other people. Some people are very much more empathic than others. My daughter is very sensitive to the moods of people around her, and she's like a sponge. She will go into a situation, and whatever's going on, she absorbs, and it is not a good thing because she will walk into the work situation in a great mood, and she'll encounter coworkers who are having a yucky day, and immediately she can feel her mood, her vibes alter. So she has to do a lot of grounding and other stuff to not take on that energy. When you're caring for someone living with dementia, as the dementia progresses, these individuals begin to lose the ability, and I'm speaking very generally, they start to lose the ability to really interpret facial cues and to get a sense of, are you sad? Are you angry? This lack of empathy is also really pronounced in people who have behavioral variant frontotemporal dementia. They're really clueless when it comes to people's affect and people's moods. So they may be more sensitive to other ways of feeling what the person is feeling. And oftentimes people with FTD are more easily irritated by what they believe is, excuse me, like your lack of support. And what they perceive is you not agreeing with them. And if they ask you a question and you don't respond because you're thinking about it, they may jump to this conclusion, you're just being difficult, you're not supporting me, and then you get the rage. The take-home message here is to be really aware of your facial expressions, to keep them as positive as possible, and also to be aware of your own vibes and your own energy. Because if you're pissed off at something that happened at work and you walk in the house, your loved one may feel that energy and they may assume you're angry at them. And you're like, no, I'm not. But they think you are. In other videos, I will explain how some of these brain changes and the thinking and memory problems that go with the brain changes create behaviors that you find difficult to handle. Right now, however, I want to emphasize some ways you can help the person with dementia and make caregiving smoother. So here's 3 easy approaches to arguments that you can be doing right now to take the edge off some of the communications. One is avoid the temptation to say remember or quiz your family member. And part of that also goes into over-explaining. We're used to giving very detailed explanations to people. So if someone says to me, yeah, I was wondering why you didn't answer my email. My explanation would be, oh, shoot, I must have missed it. 200, 300 emails a day, and I had one of these schedules where I didn't have a whole lot of time to go through email, so I was answering emails on the fly and putting out fires, and I missed your email. I mean, I basically answered kind of a short, oh yeah, I didn't see your email, but I'll get to it. I gave them an essay. And being a college professor, I don't answer in essays. I tend to answer in like volumes. I tend to talk too much. That tendency to explain, we've been doing our whole lives. And now you're a caregiver of someone living with dementia, and you go into those old habits, and after the third word, they're just hearing, and then they may react in an irritable way because they've lost patience and they can't follow this long explanation. So this is where logic and explanations are not your friend. And arguing with them and presenting your reality isn't going to work because they're exposed to dementia land, dementia reality. This is where short, sweet, and concrete is the best approach. Hey, I wanted something and you didn't do it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot. Or, oh, okay, I hear you. So I use the approach of okay, as in, okay, I hear you, and then say whatever it is you need to say, but keep it as brief as possible. In the beginning part of the dementia journey, you can get away with longer sentences, but as the dementia progresses, the sentences are getting progressively smaller. There are days you're going to feel like the old children's primary, see Jane run, see Spot roll over, the Dick and Jane reader primers that I know I had. I'm really letting you know about my age, but it is what it is. There are days you're going to feel like you're talking like that, but it's okay. So that's important, and also to fix your vibes, keep your energy in check. And again, some caregivers think they're helping their loved one by quizzing them and asking them to remember, because they're thinking, if I keep doing that, I'll keep that part of the brain active. There is a difference between helping someone with dementia process information with cues and hints versus treating them like they are a game show contestant. I will talk about ways to support a person's memory in other webinars and videos, but at the same time, presenting logic and arguing would be like me pointing to an empty hanger in a closet and saying, here, put on the blue shirt. And if your memory is, if you have no short-term memory, there's no bright blue shirt in your closet. Like, you have empty hangers where the memories used to be. And no amount of arguing is going to convince you otherwise about a reality that you aren't experiencing. Now, I want to use this example for slow retrieval, because oftentimes you ask a person living with dementia a question, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you may go on to another topic, and then the question is answered, and you think, oh, okay. I talked about having networks of nerves that send messages back and forth. When you woke up this morning, most likely, this is what your neurons look like. You had messages going back and forth. Pretty much your neurons were handling everything. There wasn't a lot of traffic. You were doing okay. Now, this was me about mid-morning with everything going on in my work and getting emails, getting texts, dealing with different, I'm running 2 projects, I'm a co-investigator on 3 other projects, and we have a big deadline. The National Institute of Aging wants all this stuff that we have to give them, and I have an employee whose child got sick and needed to take some sick leave. I have another employee who has some other stuff going on, and it's like, oh my gosh. So I'm juggling my responsibilities and also other people's responsibilities, just the way the crumble today. So my brain looked like this slide at about 10:30 this morning. So I was on cognitive overload. I was processing as best as I could, but there were some things I was struggling to do because I had a lot going on. And that's okay. A person with dementia when I showed you the picture of the shrieking brain and the fact that the neurons have moved further apart and they're not touching each other, you can have these washed out roads in neural networks where you have death of neurons, and so you have lost these networks, you've lost these connections, and what your brain does is the body loves duplication. If you have one pathway, guaranteed you have 4 or 5 others. What happens is if a main network is coming under fire and it's having problems, the brain will access parallel networks, but it's like this. Where I live, we have some major interstates. You're talking 6 lanes of traffic, and it's enough to handle the morning rush hour. But heaven forbids a tractor trailer falls over or catches on fire and we lose a lane or 2, or the whole road, the whole interstate shuts down. Now we're all leaving the interstate and we're traveling on some little 2-lane highway with a stoplight every 50 feet that was never designed for morning rush hour traffic for the entire city of Birmingham. When I lived in Philadelphia, I still go there to visit. We have some mega highways. We have Interstate 95. That sucker is like 6 to 8 lanes in either direction. That is an interstate. And you think, holy crap, 6 lanes going north and 6 lanes going south? This is awesome. But when you get rush hour traffic and then you have a disabled vehicle or something, all of a sudden traffic goes to a halt and it's a mess. So even though you have some really large networks in your brain, if there's enough nerve damage and you're losing lanes within the big network, it slows down the cognitive functioning, it slows down the retrieval. And here's an example. This is an MRI, and it's showing people who've had cardiovascular disease. And when I look at MRIs and I'm trying to come up with a diagnosis, one of the things I look at is cardiovascular burden. So in this first brain right here, you can see these little potholes, these hyperintensities. That's damage from heart disease and vessel disease. And you have a pothole here and a pothole here, but there's still plenty of brain tissue for the neurons to cause detours around these damaged areas. As you have more nerve death, and even though I'm using an MRI showing people with cardiovascular damage because it shows up on an MRI and it's easy to look at, as people have nerve damage, the same thing happens. You just don't see it as eloquently on an MRI as you do here. This person has moderate cardiovascular disease, and you can see where the individual potholes are now joining together, and you are losing entire pathways. These hyperintensities, that's artifact, but this is the real deal here. And then in this person with severe cardiovascular burden, you can see like entire networks. There is a little bit of artifact. This is not artifact. And you can see some potholes up here, but look, you are losing entire networks. And when you look at the slices of the brain, you will see this damage starting at the bottom of the brain and working its way all the way to the motor cortex. So you can really see extensive areas of damage. And that goes with the road analogy or the highway analogy. When you're dealing with arguments, and then those arguments go into refusals, the first thing to look at is sometimes we trigger those behaviors. We have the best intentions, but if we're quizzing, if we're beginning every sentence with remember, if we are explaining and explaining presenting logic and trying to convince the person living with dementia that what they are recalling and experiencing is incorrect and we are right, that just degenerates into an us versus them situation, and it's not going to go well. So a lot of times we accidentally trigger this stuff because we're trying to be helpful and awesome, and we're food barring it. So I talked about 3 strategies you can do: avoiding the quizzing, the remembering, using short, sweet, and concrete, and keeping aware of your own emotional responses. But there is some other stuff you can do to help preserve as much function and to avoid some of the protests and refusals and arguments. Consistent schedules are a beautiful thing. We put children on schedules to teach them how to do stuff and to create memories. We use schedules to maintain function and memory. And I will tell you right now, I love my schedule. I'm a creature of habit. I like to get up at the same time, have my coffee, pack my lunch. I do things in a certain order. And if something happens, that order is, I deviate from the schedule, I wind up walking out the door, forgetting my ID badge, or bringing my laptop, but forgetting the power cord, and my day is a shambles after that. The caregiver mood, that is part of your vibes because moods are contagious. Sensory deficits are important. If the person wears glasses or needs hearing aids, make sure that the glasses are clean. I never appreciated how dirty glasses get until I had to wear them. And I put them on and I'm like, how did I get all these smudgies? And I'm constantly cleaning them because it's amazing what a little smudge can do to my vision. And hearing aids are such a beautiful thing. My mom resisted for the longest time getting her hearing tested and getting hearing aids. And finally, she caved and bought hearing aids a few months ago. And when I went to visit her in April, it's like I had a new mom. I would say something and she could respond, where before I was talking and she was just nodding her head. And then she'd ask a question and I thought, oh my goodness, is she having memory issues? No, she never heard what I said, or she thought she heard what I said, but it was incorrect. So glasses, hearing aids, those things are so important. And as the dementia progresses, your approach becomes even more important. And there's something called elder speak, which is baby talk. And as I age, I am the recipient of elder speak, especially if I walk into an electronics store. I'll walk into, we have something called Best Buy in the States, and I happen to love Best Buy. I'll walk into a computer electronics store to, get some more toys, like I need another podcast microphone. And I'm pretty savvy, but because I walk in and the young person working there clocks me at a certain age and demographic and assumes I'm a techno idiot, I become elder spoken to. I get the high pitch, hi, and what can we do for you today? And it's all I can do to not respond in a very rude and inappropriate way. But I just take a deep breath, and then after a few exchanges, they realize I do know a little more than the average bear. But I love watching nurses in hospitals. The younger nurses, they do this. They'll see an older adult, and when I ran clinical groups and I had students, I had a student look at me and say, oh, I just love old people. They're so cute. It was all I could do to not grab her by the throat and shake her. Because don't call me cute. You can call me amazing and many other adjectives, but it's really demeaning when I hear individuals talk about an older adult, or infantilize them. Oh, they're so cute. They're so adorable. I'm like, F you. But if you really want to piss off a person with dementia, talk to them in a high-pitched baby talk, like the way you would talk to a 3-year-old or a pet. My dog loves this. When I talk to Amira, hey, who's the cute? No, she's not going to respond now. Who's the cute little baby? Yeah, you're so sweet. Who's my little? Yeah, who's my little love? Yeah. Okay, that works for your dog. All right. Hi, you're such a little love. Okay, maybe. For the most part, that baby talk that I talk to my animals with, they love it because that usually means they get affection and food. Don't do that to a person with dementia unless you do want to be physically assaulted. There's a researcher, Christine Williams. She's made a career out of documenting how elder speak will precipitate assaults in nursing homes. So, yeah. There's like, I'm going back to bed. You bothered me. It's okay, Mira. Another strategy that goes beyond the three I talked about is apologize. So if your loved one is saying to you, what doctor's appointment? You never told me about a doctor's appointment, and you're looking around at the 400 stickies all over the house, and like you wrote in lipstick on their mirror, doctor's appointment today, and there's the calendar, places circled in red or the date circled in red, and you're thinking, really? When in doubt, apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have forgotten. And then just roll with it. And as the dementia, if you're dealing with someone in the moderate to severe stage, this is where you may need to add gestures and pantomime to what you're talking about, because as the people progress, and again, for people with FTD, the loss of the temporal lobe happens a lot faster than people with, say, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease dementia or Lewy body. But the temporal lobes are really important for understanding the spoken word. And over time, people hear conversation, they hear words, but they lost the dictionary. So you're saying to them, hey, Mom, go to the fridge and pull out the ketchup for me. First of all, I just gave a 3-step command, hey, Mom, go watch it, two-step, but I still added a third part. So she might only hear the ketchup part, not go to the fridge. So she might be looking for the ketchup on the counter. It's not there. And the second thing is she may have lost some of the words that I've just said, so she's not comprehending. And I have family members who come to the clinic and their loved ones in the moderate to severe stage, and their loved one the family member says, I think I need to take her to an ear, nose, and throat doctor or an audiologist, because every time I say something, she says, what? Excuse me? Huh? So I think she's losing her hearing. Nope, she can hear, she's not comprehending. So when you have the loss of comprehension, that's when adding gestures and pantomime to your verbal speech and keeping your verbal speech a little shorter can help avoid triggering arguments, refusals, and protests. And another strategy is to ask for help. But in the presentation I'm doing tomorrow evening, I actually go through the different stages of dementia and talk about which strategies to use for the stage. Okay. Now, I get this a whole lot. I get people saying to me, why do I have to change? I'm not the one with dementia. And like I tell my son, who's getting married in 2 months, son, you can be right or you can be happy. Pick one. And he laughs. But closer he's getting to the wedding, more he's like agreeing with me, especially with all the wedding stuff going on. But the thing is, people living with dementia, they're experiencing brain breakdown. And increasingly, you become their hard drive. You become their brain. You are their safety net. Which is also why in the later stages, they start to shadow you and follow you around as their disease and their memory worsens because you become a safe harbor. So to recap, don't engage with arguments, use the okay and approach, and I have to give some recognition. Glenn's written a lot of books, from his experience caring for people with frontotemporal dementia. And he has a really cool strategy called Yes, We Have No Bananas. And that's a way to, yes, I hear you, and then present what you want to say. So I call it the okay and approach. They're similar. I also sometimes will recommend that caregivers say things like, okay, I hear you, and then say what they have to say. For example, driving in the beginning can be a real issue, where the neurologist says, you're not allowed to drive anymore. And then the family member gets the brunt of it for the next several months. I want to drive. How come you won't let me drive? I'm a safe driver. I can drive just fine. And I tend to handle this depending on the type of dementia. If it's Alzheimer's, I will use a physical reason for them to take a break from driving. I see you're having a knee replacement, or you're having some issues with your neck and it's hard for you to turn. Let's take a break from driving. When you come back, I'll reassess. As the memory gets worse with Alzheimer's, by the time they come back again for their next visit 6 months down the road, the driving may be less of an issue because they're forgetting more about it. I did that. Sometimes that works with behavioral variant, FTD. I've also had it backfire with people with FTD because their recall is their hippocampi stay a little healthier, longer in the disease than, say, Alzheimer's. So these people have more recall, but they don't have the judgment and the executive function, so they're acting impulsively. A lot of these people can mechanically drive, but the road rage is what has us pull the license, because they're trying to run people off the road, or they're tailgating. They're doing all sorts of really bad behaviors that are jeopardizing themselves, the occupants in their vehicle, and everyone around them. And to be fair, there are people without a dementia diagnosis who shouldn't be driving. I get it. But having said that, I just want to point out that these strategies you have to really be careful depending on the type of dementia. So that being said, let's say you're dealing with a driving issue. I may say, okay, I understand you want to drive, and just let them keep talking. Or, oh, okay, you feel angry about this. Because the other thing I tell family caregivers is blame the clinician. Yeah, Rita, the nurse practitioner, she said you can't drive. This is her fault. I'll take the blame so you don't have to. And I talked about short, sweet, and concrete. And here's one of the things with short, sweet, and concrete. It is okay to repeat the same thing over and over again, because the person's forgetting. Oftentimes, family caregivers feel stupid using the exact same response, and they start trying to mix it up. And actually, adding new content and adding new stuff may trigger more arguments. It's okay to definitely use the same thing. And I'm just going to go over here, and silly me, I forgot to plug in my computer, and I just got a message that my computer is not happy. I am sorry for interrupting this. And here I was bragging about technology, and I can't even remember to plug in my laptop. Epic fail. Okay, so in tomorrow's webinar, I'm going to talk about getting cooperation depending on the stage of dementia. Oh, one more important note. You may be thinking to yourself, I don't know if this is going to work. For Pete's sake, I've read other books, I've watched YouTube videos, I've gone to support programs, and here is really what makes my stuff a little different and unique, is my strategies, especially the ones I'm sharing right now, they are coming from a combination of my research, my clinical experience, and work I've done with family caregivers. So I hope that you at least try some of these strategies, hopefully tweak them and figure out ways you can personalize them so that they do work. Leave me some comments on my Facebook page, or if you're watching this as a recording, to leave comments in the page below.